All right, we're gonna get going here, guys, and as people join in, they can get caught up with us. But again, welcome to our our event here today, the Next Level Coaches Summit. I'm the host and facilitator, Jon Harris. A little bit about myself, and then we'll jump right into the content here. But so I have coached athletics for many years. Was a high school collegiate athlete myself. Have coached youth and high school and college, and uh, have a passion for sports on both the playing and the performance side. And in the last, I don't know, 7 years, have ventured into combining my passion for coaching and taking that into leadership and performance and in my corporate and personal life, and kind of meshing those two things together. And had this aha moment a couple years ago, where really the tactics and approaches and development, whether I'm working with a 14-year-old lacrosse player or a 42-year-old senior executive, are the same. The concepts that apply to performing and leading and developing yourself at a high level are really transferable across all domains. And but today we're going to focus on that athlete, and not just athletes in general, but coaching and developing high level athletes. And we have a great speaking group here today to really focus on equipping you, the coach, with the tools, capabilities, and frameworks in order to take both your coaching to the next level, but then optimize the performance of the athletes and other coaches that you work with to really get the most out of what you have to level up your performance and become just the best coach that you're capable of being. We're all a combination of mental toughness, leadership and development, athletics, nutrition. You're just going to get such a great cross section of capabilities and tools today that we're really excited to collaborate and bring them to you. So just a quick rundown of our agenda, what we have here today. So we have this group of speakers that'll be speaking with you. Each of them are going to go about 20 to 25 minutes. After each speaker, we'll have a Q&A session. So we'll do Q&A between each individual speaker, and then we'll have a wrap-up Q&A at the end. If you have to leave and come back, by all means, feel free to do that. This is going to be a couple hours of content for you. So I know for anyone, even us speakers, that can be a lot to do to sit through and take it all in. We will also commit a few things. We'll follow up with you with the survey shortly after to get your feedback. We want to know, what you like the most, what we could have done better. This is a continuous improvement activity. We expect this to be one of many of these types of events that we'll be able to bring to you. And two, we're going to record this, and then we'll have it available probably within 48 hours for you to be able to watch it. So if you miss anything, or you forget to write something down, we'll have that available for you. So with that said, we're excited to bring this to you. We're going to get started right away. First off, Dom, I'm going to hand it over to you in a little introduction, and then let's jump right into it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Dom Clegg. I was a college athlete as well. I played at Ohio Dominican, a Division II school in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I live now. I coached college football for 6 years at the collegiate level, like I said, and was able to coach with Kent State, Arkansas State, Ohio Dominican, Wheeling University, and various others in my time. Ended up leaving that space to get into performance coaching, and really enjoy being able to work with different athletes and coaches and helping them. So what I'm going to talk about today is I have a business called Alpha Pack, and the goal of Alpha Pack is to create a pack of alphas that are going to help change this world. And for me, an alpha is just someone who's constantly improving and then performs at their highest when called upon. So that's just an alpha to me. And what I like to touch base on is the idea of the controllables, the alpha controllables. And so with an alpha, they're going to focus on 4 things that are totally in their control. And with an alpha, their 4 things in their control are their effort, their attitude, their target, and their toughness. Those are the 4 things that are always in their control. And to start with the effort part, what we want to focus on is that each athlete and even coaches, you have to set the example to start with, but your effort has to be maximum because you can control you at the end of the day. And with an alpha, they're going to have maximum effort because it comes down to the question of if it's 100% up to you, why wouldn't you give 100%? So give all that you have, give everything that you have, and just do it. Don't ever try. Trying puts a scale on your effort that isn't maximum. And that's when we give ourselves, I guess, the cop out or the, well, I tried, but I wasn't able to make it. And then we don't know what to correct because there's that variable of effort that wasn't maximum. If we know we gave everything and we failed, great. We can learn from it, which I like to use the idea of relax, being able to remove ourselves from the situation so we can look back on it and reflect, find the things that we did wrong. And then we plan a new plan and then we go attack it. That's what we're going to need to do when we fail. And that creates relentlessness and a relentless effort. And that's how you can teach your athletes of, if your effort's maximum, we can always find ways to improve. But if it's not maximum, then I got to correct that first before I can correct anything else. So as a coach, we want to make sure that they're giving maximum effort in all we do so we can go correct the little things as opposed to correcting their effort. The next part is their attitude. And your attitude is just your mindset revealed to everybody else. And when I think about attitude, I want it to be productive, which means that it's purposeful and positive. And your effort is going to come from, like I said, your mindset, and your mind is just a supercomputer. And at the end of the day, our athletes are the coders of their own supercomputer. And if we're coding it with bad, negative things that aren't helping us to be driving to our success, that's when we're going to have problems. So we want to be able to control that self-talk, which is that coding, and be purposeful with it, be positive with it, be using I am statements to reinforce all the things that we want to achieve in our life. And that's going to help us achieve that mindset that, hey, I can do whatever I need to do. I just have to come with this productive, purposeful, and positive attitude and keep that self-talk helping me, not destroying me. So it's productive over destructive. And when we think about sound bites, again, it's maximum effort. It's productive attitude, right? Those are the things we want to keep harping on them with them. So it's the little sound bites that they can take back and understand it's productive, it's maximum. The next part is our target. Okay. And our target is just our intentional focus. Every single athlete, the greatest athletes of all time, were able to put their intentional focus in the moment because they won each moment. They didn't win the day. They didn't win the whole year all at once. They won it one moment at a time. So if we place our intentional focus on each moment, that's how we're going to be able to overcome that pressure at the end of the day. Because the intentional focus, when we look at the big scaled up goals that in our life, we start feeling pressure of, oh, I haven't done this yet. Oh, I haven't done that yet. But if we're locking in on the moment, that helps us develop that process that helps us get to those wins. But we have to win each moment to win each day to create a win in that goal. So we want to be able to control where our focus is placed, and we want to be very intentional about where it's placed and not looking at the big picture, but looking at the small little details and winning those little moments one day at a time. And then the last part is our toughness. And our toughness is not being able to just go out there and beat people up or play injured all the time. I know that's what we say, or being able to do things on our own. A lot of people think, oh, I'm tough enough, I can do this on my own. That's not being tough. Being tough is being able to do what needs to be done to the standard it needs to be done. And that's what true toughness comes from. It's having that discipline to live up to your standard every single day in every single moment and live it for your team, for yourself, and to help your athletes understand that when you're truly tough, you're going to do uncomfortable things. You're going to do hard things. And that's going to push you to be better and help you understand that when we do the tough things, our intentional focus on those single moments allow us to build that confidence of I can do whatever I need to do, and I can do it to that standard because I've done it before in the past. And that's truly what's in our control. And if we can control our toughness, that's going to help us be tough enough to live the standard of a maximum effort, to live the standard of a productive attitude, to live the standard of having intentional focus on every single moment. And so those are the 4 things that we can control internally at all times. And giving them this process to follow day in and day out is going to help make that a lot smaller for them. So they don't feel like they have to win every single day right now. They just have to win the moment in order to win that day. And if we can do that, I like to use again, the soundbite of eat. You got to eat every single day. EATT. eat every single day to help you win those days. Now, there is one controllable that isn't internal that I've learned recently that has really, really helped me. It's called our environment. And we can set up our environment for our success, right? Our environment is this wall behind me, right? I could have blurred it out if I wanted to. It's my phone. I can put everything on there that I need to help set myself up for success. Maybe it's a post-it note in my room that says, I am a state champion. I am a national champion. Developing that mindset of this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be because of all the hard work I'm putting in. And we want to set our environment up for our success because it's in our control as well. It's one of the few external resources we have that we can actually control instead of looking at all the other things outside of our control, which again builds that pressure. So what we want to be able to do with our athletes at the end of the day is give them the small things to focus on and lock in on that process every single day. That's going to help them stack those wins one day at a time so they can eventually stack those big wins on top of each other again, one day at a time. So that's what I had to speak about. If there's any questions, I would love to talk more and be able to help you guys understand maybe some different resources you guys can put into place.
Well, Don, before we open up with any questions from our audience, I have a few questions for you. So, you had the opportunity, not just being a high level athlete yourself, but now you're working with them. And so, how do you see this, like, in the results of of your own folks that you work with, like coming to fruition in real life, like, applying it? Because I think what's interesting, it's one thing for us to talk about it, have it to be theoretical, but you're seeing this in real time as you're working with collegiate and pro athletes who are implementing these. So how is that forming? How are you seeing it? The ones who are really buying into it, what type of results are they seeing?
Yeah, I think the best two examples are my guys that are playing professional indoor football right now. The one I started working with in February, and he didn't have a process in place, and he didn't really know where to go, and his focus was everywhere. Like he felt like he needed to do everything.
Mm.
But when we started locking in on like, how has your effort been? And he's like, well, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. What are you saying to yourself? Sometimes I'm talking really great to myself. Sometimes I'm very negative. And I think when we were able to help him understand that the intentional focus on the process with that target and the intentional focus on his toughness overall and his effort and his attitude, he was able to lock in on those every single play, which made every single play better and then made every single game better. And it started in practice, really. And it's being able to apply those in practice initially that allowed him to eventually become the league all first team all league when it came to being a linebacker. Their team ended up winning the league championship, and it's because he was able to apply those daily, not just during game day, but every single day of the week leading up to a game. That allowed him to have that confidence in a game to be able to lock in on, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this. Now I just got to have the intentional focus, the effort, the attitude in that moment to live up to what I can do.
Can you imagine, as a coach, it's one of those things that if you could implement and install that, every player, it would be amazing. If you can get a third of your players with that, because I feel like things like this are, they're they're a positive virus. So if someone sees a player doing really well, especially if they weren't the best and then they get the best, they become better, and someone's saying like, wow, watch that guy, he kind of went from just another player, or this young lady, yeah, she was an athlete, but now look at like the way she dribbles and the way she cuts in her court vision. um I just made this is a little bit theoretical, but I like your opinion on it, of like, how important is this to install these ideas in your athletes to really unlock and unleash the full capability of what not just your team has, but these individuals have, when you have that type of performance that you could potentially see across, on a football field, 40, 50, players really coming together with that type of focus and intentionality.
Yeah, so it's funny, I probably should have led with this, but this is what I was teaching my linebackers when I was a college coach, and I
Mm.
just kind of carried this on and expanded a little bit on it. But with JJ is the guy that I was talking about before with the Arena League and who won and was the linebacker. By him being able to do this, it actually became contagious on the team, which is funny. You said it's theoretical, like this is real life. He became more of a leader because he was having that confidence of, I know what I'm doing and I can actually help my teammates be better as well. And he had the idea of like, well, I'm accountable to myself already, which I think Maren might talk about a little bit later about being able to lead others, but he was able to do that eventually because he had all that instilled in him of like the confidence of, I'm controlling my effort, I'm controlling my attitude, I'm controlling my target, I'm tough enough to do all this stuff and live the standard, so I can also lead others. And then people started also following him and being able to lead more and have more of that effort and have more of that that productive attitude. And so you said it was theoretical initially, which then it became realistic on this team. And again, I was only working with one guy on the team. I was only working with one of them. I wasn't working with the whole team even yet. So it's awesome to see that actually transpire, that the defensive coordinator, who I was pretty close with as well, said, one, JJ was a completely different guy, but as he grew throughout the season, the team grew as well.
Maybe last question for me, and then open it up for anybody else who's interested in posing questions to Dom. How important is this for you as a coach? You know, we'll get into this a little bit later, foreshadowing some content that Maren's going to help us wrap up on. But if you if you didn't express these same disciplines and focus as a coach, would it be, because I know you, Dom, and I know you're a disciplined guy. I know the way you operate, right? You were a player and you kind of you lead by example, but not every coach does that. And I just want your thoughts on, you know, this, you know, kind of practicing what we preach approach, and if you know, you could get under a squat rack and work out with your team. You could, you know, do the things and have the intentionality that you're preaching about. What are your thoughts on the importance of that? And not everybody, I mean, you know, I'm 42. I probably can't squat what the college athletes I'm working with can, but I can still hold my own. But not all of us can do that. That said, I'm being more tongue in cheek there, but
Yeah.
like, you know, if you're not doing the things that you're telling the kids to do or the athletes to do, what do you think is the you know the negative consequences of that?
It's very hard for them to relate because they see you more as the boss and not as
Mhm.
a leader. Because they can't understand why it's important to them if it's not important to you. And that's why for me, like I do talk about this, but in everything I do, I make sure that I'm giving maximum effort. I make sure I'm having a productive attitude, which is why I do I am statements every single morning to make sure that I'm setting my mind up for success. Because when I was an athlete, my self-talk was absolutely terrible. I was my own worst enemy. And so I've learned that I needed to have a better mindset so I could bring that. And as a coach, I think that if you're not showing them the example and showing them what you want, it's hard for them to reflect that back to you. And not to relate to or say that your athletes are dogs, but like with a dog, you have to teach them how to do it and then you reward them for that. It's the same way. You have to show them what you want from your athletes by giving that maximum effort. And maybe it's not maximum effort under a squat bar. Maybe it's maximum effort in your film study or your game planning, right? Maybe that's what you're giving maximum effort in, and you're having intentional focus and detail, and you're bringing a productive attitude of when you don't do well in something, you're still bringing positivity and purposefulness to what you're saying to yourself because they hear that and they see that. And so it's being able to reflect exactly what you want from your athletes in your own life and in your own coaching ability. And that's what's going to be able to help them see that of, oh, coach is doing this way. Well, if he's giving everything he has, then why wouldn't I give everything I have for him or her? Right. That's what I think is very important, to lead by example and not just say what I do and not do what I say. Right.
So I know I said the last question, but this is really the last question, I promise. What you've said this a few times. I want you to just expand on it. What is an I am statement?
An I am statement is a statement that may not necessarily be true currently. It's a goal that maybe you're working for. So for me, a personal I am statement is going to be, I am the best husband for Maddie, my wife. And there are days that I'm absolutely not, but I'm working for that every single day to be the best. And then there's also I am statements for my profession, which is I am a top 10 performance coach in the world. Am I a top 10 performance coach in the world right now? Absolutely not. I am not. I'm not getting rated like that, but I tell myself that I am that because it's building the building blocks and the coding in my brain that I am going to be that someday. And it also instills in me that if I'm going to say that I am this, then I have to do the work daily to
Mm.
become that. So it's a two-part thing. It's developing the mindset for it, but it's also giving me the drive to show up as my very best every single day so I can achieve those. And then it also builds that confidence of I'm doing this work every single day. So when I am that, what I say I am, then I'm already ready for that. So it comes down to I am a state champion. Well, yeah, you may not be a state champion right now, but you start building that mindset over and over again, and it drives you to show up as your best in practice and workouts and games. That when you become a state champion, you already knew it was going to happen, and you're able to drive to that success.
Love it. Appreciate that. All right. Anyone else, either maybe any of our panelists who wanted to chime in or any of our attendees have any questions or comments?
I would love to, John, and I would just say, Dom, I would put you in that top 10 category. I feel very inspired by you. I follow you on social media, and you're an incredible human being living by example. One of the areas though that you talked about was environment, and I've been able to see a lot of the people that you coach because I follow them now too. And their whole the way they post, what they post about, who they post they're with, has all changed since working with you, and I think that's just absolutely incredible. My question for you though is how, when you're working with athletes, how do you get to know their environment, and then how do you help them change it to help them long term?
So I start with like I guess the simple idea of environment of what's in your room and what's on your phone, right? I usually, if I'm on a Zoom or FaceTime, they're in their room and I'll ask them, so does that poster need to be on your wall? And they're like, no, I can take that down. I'm like, okay, well, you can control that, correct? And they're like, yeah, I can control that. So if that poster is going to help you or hurt you, which should it be up there or not? And it's just asking them questions to help them understand of, all right, well, if I have a whiteboard, maybe me writing my I am statements on that so I can see that every single day is going to help me. Or if I have my phone on me at all times, why wouldn't I put my screensaver as a motivational quote, or again, my I am statements? Or I know Ben talks about the burn, right? I will talk with teams as well about the burn, or I call it an alpha instinct, but having that on there to keep driving you. So it's kind of finding out what they would use daily and then just slightly making small changes throughout it. It's not a big full scale change. We have to repaint your whole room and put up these motivational quotes. It's just little changes over time that, again, you see it, you see it, you see it, you see it. And again, it's just constant programming.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Tom. I just want to highlight a comment that Mark Bunker made that hang with, this kind of goes into environment. Hang with four like-minded people, you'll become the fifth, right? There are other ways of saying that you're the average of the five other people that you're with, whatever number you want to use, right? And so that kind of it's not just your surroundings, but who you surround yourself with. And I think maybe that's a great way to transition from here around this group showing up to participate in this, and kind of what you decide to feed your mind with. And this I think comes into a lot of the stuff that you talked about, where whether like what you believe, who you're talking to, how do you reflect upon yourself, what are you putting into your head is going to input or impact what comes out. And so whether that's visually on what's around you, or what you listen to, who you talk to, who you influences you're going to become the output of all those things put together.
Yeah, Mark, I think that's great. I actually will touch on that sometimes with different teams, depending on what their needs are. And if their coach is like, I have a few guys that maybe don't run with the right crowd, I'll throw that in there of like, you can control who you hang out with. You can control whether you go hang out with your teammates that are doing the right stuff, or you go hang out with the teammates that maybe aren't into doing the correct things to be successful and everything. So that's a great point as well, Mark. I appreciate you bringing that up.
All right, Dom, anything else you want to touch on or or comment before we wrap up and move on to the next
Yeah.
speaker?
I will put a quick plug in. I have a course coming up in the fall. It's not set on dates yet, but it's for anybody that's looking to have their athletes learn to be better leaders. It's called Coach the Captains. It's going to be a 6-week course, 1 hour a week with me on a Zoom. So if anybody's interested in having any of their athletes, whether they're freshmen in high school all the way up through college, professional, would love to be able to help them and build high performing leaders. So anybody that's interested, please feel free to reach out and get more information on that.
Fantastic.
I appreciate it.
Tom. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we're going to move on to our next speaker. We have Bob Turner, and I won't steal his thunder by giving him a wonderful intro, but I will just, your medals behind you speak for yourself. Bob's he's another fun follow on social media. He's done Ironman races. He's a very inspiring individual, hiking up mountains, all types of fun, interesting activities for those, I guess, who are glutton for self-punishment. But Bob, welcome. Maybe a little bit about yourself, and then you can jump right into your topic, my friend.
Great. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate the intro, and welcome to all you guys that jumped on. I appreciate it. John, I want to thank you first for putting this together and giving us the opportunity to get out here in front of people and work on our craft. Whether you guys know it or not, we're all graduates of the Ben Newman coaching Coach to Coaches certification program. So we got some street cred now, and that's pretty cool. And it feels good for a guy like me that's kind of coming up through the ranks. So I appreciate this opportunity more than you know. Maren, Amit, Ron, Dom, thank you guys for doing this and believing in me. So I'm Bob Turner. I live in Southern Maine. I guess I could best be described as a gatherer of people. Like John said, I like to do the crazy stuff. I'm the guy that says, hey, let's grab our bikes and ride 100 miles on Saturday, or let's go climb that mountain, or let's sign up for that race that we said we'd never do again after doing one of them. So I own Summit Coaching and Consulting. I'm also a 20-year remodeling contractor, and I'm working on moving into coaching full time, and I love it. It's my passion. It's my edge, and that's one of the things that I have developed is the edge online communities. And I work one-on-one with people, businesses, contractors, entrepreneurs alike. So you might say that I've done a lot business-wise. I've done a lot athletically. I didn't play collegiately, but I've been a going machine since I got out of school and doing some of the solo stuff. And as I was thinking about putting this together, I started writing about mental toughness and all that. And I said, well, wait a minute. I'm talking to leaders. I'm talking to people that are molding humans. I want to talk about leadership. So today I wanted to talk about leading from a place of service, something that I've learned a lot about in the last couple of years. In the corporate world, I ended up in leadership positions a lot. I'm one of those guys that shows up early, stays late. I'm going to work harder than the next guy. You're not going to beat me in, that kind of thing. When you're like that, that puts you in a leadership position, whether you like it or not. And regardless of your people skills, your interpersonal skills, whether you're an empath or not, all of a sudden you're charged with taking care of people and making sure they're okay. And I never had a more stark lesson of that than when I was put in charge of handling all the millwork companies goings on overnight, and went from being a draftsman to being in charge of 30 people the next day. And my office door filled up, and I realized all of a sudden that I better get on track with what's going on in these guys' lives and how they're going about their day if I was going to be successful in guiding them. So my path to leadership and coaching has been an interesting one. It's been through athletics and through business. I've just been drawn to responsibility. I like to motivate and inspire others. There are people on this call that I work with, and they can attest to that. But like I said, at my core, I'm a gatherer of people. I like to bring people together. I like to see them succeed. I like to, like John said, we'll climb a mountain. I get so much more out of climbing a mountain with someone that hasn't done it before. And as we get to the top, just kind of fall back and watch them get there first and achieve that, and maybe do a little video. They say that when you're worried more about your players or athletes' success than you are your own, you're truly a coach. And I feel like I've kind of crossed that threshold. One of the quotes that really resonates with me, I'm not sure who said it, but it's find your uniqueness and exploit it in the service of others. And I really feel like that's what I'm up to. My uniqueness, my burn, if you will, as Ben Newman says, or my edge, I feel like is the example that I am for others. I hold myself to a high standard. Like Dom said, if we're leading people, we got to be walking the walk. An example of that for me is, John mentioned the medals. Sure, I've been through Ironmans. I've had to be tough. I'm on the backside of an Ironman marathon. I got 13 miles to run. Nobody's around. I could mail it in. I could walk. I could come off my pace. Nobody's going to know, right? But no, I'm going to give 100%, 110% because I'll know. I've got to go to bed that night knowing I left it all out there. So I've enjoyed kind of growing as a leader. When I finally realized that if I came from a place of service, that I was going to have some success. Really what happened was I stumbled upon the question, how can I help you the most right now? And when I started asking people that, whether it was someone that I was coaching, someone that I was leading, whether it corporately, whatever, how can I help you the most right now? And it really set the table for me coming from a place of service. Like, if nothing else, we are a steward of either the business we're running, the school we're coaching for, the people that we are coaching and leading. We're working for them. Okay. We've got to be engaged, right? We've got to be working on ourselves. We have to be improving constantly. You guys are on this call. You want to improve. You sign up for the courses. You go to the workshops. You're working on your game. And when you're leading people, you have to lead alongside them. I feel like that. Okay. One of my mantras is that I've never asked anybody to do anything I wouldn't do. Whether it was work or running, doing extra work, running the laps, whatever. I'll be 55 in a couple of weeks, so I'm not going to do everything with them on the field, okay? But they need to know you would, all right? They need to know you would jump in, all right? You got to have consistency and integrity. You guys know that, right? You got to demonstrate it. It's not just enough to beat the drum and talk about, well, hey, we got to be disciplined. Well, we got to be consistent. You have to do it, and you have to demonstrate that and model that behavior that you want coming back at you. Model the behavior you want to create. If you've got a team that's meeting you at the gym, you damn well better be there before the first person shows up. Right, Maren? You better beat them in. If you've got people that work for you, you got to beat them in. They beat you in, you beat them in the next day. Come 10 minutes earlier. I've parked at the office at 4 a.m. because I had a guy that was trying to beat me in. I won eventually. You get the point. I'm leading this crew, all right? Positive attitude, resilience, right? What do you do when the shit hits the fan? Are you the person that people look to? What do you do? Are you hey, follow me, I got this, climb on? Those are the leaders, not the, oh my word, what are we going to do people, right? One of my favorite coaches, high school basketball coach, Lee Allen, right here in Wyndham. My favorite coach because he was living life to a high standard. He would coach us all week, be there first, stay there late. He would take some shots himself because he was still pretty young, loved the game. But after practice, after a game, he'd go out and run a 5K. And on the weekends, he was winning 5Ks. I'm like, how's this guy doing this? I've got all I can do to get to practice right now. He was living to a standard. And he led us with purpose and vision. He told us exactly what he wanted for an outcome of the season. And he was a stickler for sportsmanship and respect and respecting the game. And I'm the same way. Those are the things that I took from Lee. I want to respect the game. I respect the business, respect transactions that I have during the week, right? How are you with your team? Does your team know that they can come to you with anything? Have you built trust? You don't gain trust with your players, your company, people that work for you. You earn it. And you earn it by having a commitment to personal excellence. That doesn't mean hey, got to be ripped up and have a six-pack, but it means that you're taking care of business. Yourself personally, your social skills and interpersonal skills are on point. You're well-adjusted. You can have a conversation. You're holding yourself to a high standard with consistency and discipline and doing it every day. One of my favorite books is Extreme Ownership. And it wasn't until I really realized that, hey, everything that's happening around here, I can point back at this guy right here. Okay. And I learned that when I was extremely frustrated with work one day, and I started reading that book and I said, oh my word, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. Now, guess what? You get credit for the wins too, right? You get credit for the wins, but when something goes wrong, always look around for who people are asking the questions to and who people are pointing to. That's when you know who the leader is. I've been messing around with mantras this past year, mostly because of my love of my life. Wendy has said, Bob, let them. Let them. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, you're ranting and raving about these people. Not everybody's like you. Let them. And so I had to let go a little bit. Okay. But with your teams and your company, Dom mentioned it. Come up with a mantra. There's a local basketball team here in Windham. They won the state championship this year, right? And I've got to meet with the coach because I want to go in and talk to the team. But I want to drop this on them. So what? Now what? So what? Now what? Yeah, you won the states last year. When are we done talking about that? And when do we flip the switch and focus on next year? All right. Some of this stuff, guys, has come from coaches that I've had, people that I've worked for, strong leaders and weak leaders. I can follow a strong leader. I suspect many of you can as well. But if they're a weak leader, look out, we're coming, right? We don't want to follow a weak leader. So where did that stuff come from for me? Probably some of my, I was a basketball guy until being 5'8" was a limiter. And so my freshman basketball coach was my favorite. He didn't know any of us. He came in, he was a new guy to town, strolled out at practice. We're all standing there. And I was a starter and I was one of the better players, not a superstar, but thinking, okay, this year is going to be the same as last year. He looked at us up and down and he said, I don't care what your last name is. I don't care what you did last year. What I want is for every single person in this gym to be better at the end of the season than they are right now. And I said, okay, understood. Literally wiped the slate clean, level playing field. Every person on that team had the same opportunity. And I respected that guy for the entire season. He was tough on us. He demanded a lot. I would dive 3 rows deep for a loose ball for that guy. He yelled at us one day. We were slacking in practice. He said, you know what? You guys have been reading your press clippings. And I learned, don't read your press clippings. For you guys that are younger, that's when they used to print stuff in the newspaper and you had to actually get down through the box score and see who did what. My least favorite coach was not in sport. It was in business. It was a guy that I had shared some stuff with in confidence. Really got vulnerable and told him a few things and places where I had screwed up and I wanted to improve. And he took the opportunity several months later in a group setting to air that out in front of a group and made me feel about this big. He lost my trust. I didn't have faith in him anymore as a leader or a coach. And I left the program a short time later. So I'll be 55 in a couple weeks. I remember these things like they were yesterday. I remember how I felt. I don't remember all the words. People don't always remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. All right. So guys, in short, you're leading humans. You're building humans. We're molding minds, I like to say. Leadership is about facilitating personal, professional growth. Like I said, creating good humans and achieving goals, right? We're all pulling on the same end of the rope together. Success, such as winning games, is a byproduct of good leadership practices. You don't have to do all the things that I just said. You can still win. I would argue that you aren't going to win a lot without doing a lot of those things. People that are successful, all the greatest coaches you see are plugged into their players. They're connected. They know when something's up. They're like, hey, come over here. Something's going on. What's up with you? I remember that as a coach, as a player, a coach took the time briefly. Say, hey, Bob, what's going on with you? What's happening? And something was going on, but it made me feel part of the team when he did that. It made me feel like he cared. So there's a couple of great John Wooden coach quotes I'm going to share with you. You guys haven't realized it yet. I'm a quote guy. What you are as a person is far more important than what you are as a basketball player. And I think if you come from that perspective as a coach, a leader, a boss, what have you, you're going to be shooting for the stars. You got to earn their trust. You got to connect. You have to live to a standard. You heard Dom mention the standard. You'll hear that from a lot of us today. The standard, the standard, the standard. We get that drilled into us from Coach Ben Newman. We're living to a standard. We don't always hit it, right? But we're living by example, leading by example, taking ownership, extreme ownership. The fact that everything that we do, we have some agency in. We've got something to do with it. We either put ourselves in a position to win, missed an opportunity, and now we're in a position to lose, or worse, we've put a group or a person, employee, or an athlete in a poor position. It all comes back to us. So I hope you can take some of these things and apply them to your own leadership style. Whether you're coaching people, leading people, you're a boss, you're an entrepreneur, there's some of those on here, business owner, service and connection, guys. Get connected, reach out, learn about people that you're dealing with. The last thing I'll leave you with is one more quote from Coach Wooden. You can't live a perfect day without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you. That's what I've got. Thank you very much. Any questions? I got a little excited there. Sorry.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody got a question for Bob? Well, I got a question, Bob. I'm interested. I guess a comment, and then I want your response on it. You know, from it's interesting because I feel like, you know, servant leadership, the concept has gotten very much gotten more airplay recently, you know, last 5-6 years, right? And so and you'd see it more, at least I saw it more from in the corporate world, and then starting to infiltrate the vernacular of athletics in, you know, the last half decade. But you had leaders who subscribed to it, but it didn't have a name, in my opinion. Bill Walsh is one who stands out to me as a great servant leader. You mentioned Wooden as one. You know, there's a quote that I love of his, and that's often used around, you know, you haven't done anything, or I'm going to jack it up, but there's something around the front of like, your day is only complete when you've done something for someone else without any wanting any return, right? Something like that. Like, I just butchered the hell out of it, but meaning that your number one focus should be to serve others, and then with that you get, you know, you'll get the most out of them. I always use the thought process as a leader and as a coach specifically, is that I can only push someone as far as they trust me. And so when you have high trust, you get high performance, because of some, I mean, your example about the lost trust that you had from that individual who you shared something with, and then, you know, then you lost trust in them, and it's like, how can you perform your best when you don't feel safe around them anymore? And so you know, kind of your thoughts on just that you know, the trust aspect to service, and how in your thoughts, and we can, you know, we're speaking athletics here, but we'll talk just leadership in general. How important is it to unlock that trust with that service mentality to get that next level of performance, and how that matters when you're leading others?
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, I'll follow a strong leader, right? I'm a guy that's going to be like, hey, you know, who's in charge around here? Because if somebody's not in charge, I'll do it, even though, you know, whatever, if I screw something up, but let somebody lead, right? And that's probably how I've ended up in leadership roles from time to time. But getting back to your question of trust, I've done contracting for 20 years, and for a few years back, 18, 19, and 20, I worked for a custom home builder locally. And I was in the office one day, and he didn't strike me as a strong leader, and it's probably part of the reason that I'm not there anymore. But I watched him forge a lien waiver. And you guys, if you don't know what construction's legalese is, it's something you have to sign to verify that a payment was made. And he forged a lien waiver to alter a progress payment, and that's a no-no. And I walked out of the office, and it occurred to me, I said, I'm not in the right place. I'm not in the right place. And they paid me very well. It would have been easy to put it on cruise control and work there and do my thing, but it just didn't set well with me. And I ultimately lost trust in him, because if that's how what's he going to do to me, if that's how he'll treat a financial institution? So there was that. And then there was, you know, the business coach that I mentioned that just made me feel this big. And I said, I'm not going down the road with this guy. He's not one of my four, you know, not one of my guys. And, you know, so I know, and Mark Bunker is on this call, and Mark's one of my clients, and Mark knows that, you know, I check in on Mark. Mark knows if he can call me anytime. Some of my clients will text me and say, hey, you got 5. Boom, their phone rings. I won't always be able to do that, but they trust me and they know what we say together. One of the lines, mantras I have is in our peak group that we have is, what happens in the peak stays in the peak. And people are vulnerable there, so they have trust. And I always say, don't let me find out it leaked from the peak, so to speak. You have to have trust. That, I mean, whether it's a business interaction or coaching, playing, and like I said, I literally would go 3 rows deep for a loose ball for Coach Sogren, because he believed in us, and he knew. He said there was we had his tournament. We were freshmen, and we were the Mustangs, and they had a year-end thing. It was the Mustang Roundup, and this guy was from Northern Maine. So he said, oh, and one more thing. He said, I want to win that damn horse tournament at the end of the year. And we went undefeated and won the tournament. And it was just the simple fact that he believed in us. We trusted him. We went down the road together. There were bumps in the road, and there will be in anything, but you gotta have trust.
I appreciate that. And I you know, it's interesting your story. I work with an organization called the Positive Coaches Alliance, and I go around with them speaking. I have one tomorrow at a local high school, and it's a lot of fun. And I get to talk to coaches of all kinds, all ages, youth, all the way up to high school and college. And you know, one of the stories I tell is I have 2 really distinct memories of youth sports. One is when I was 8 years old playing football, and I don't even remember what I did to get we had this coach Mike. He was old school, drove this old Ford truck. He to get to the games, he'd have a bunch of us just hop in the back of his truck and we go flying down, 95 and outside of DC. It was not very safety oriented, but it was the 80s and nobody cared. He was just keep your helmets on, you'll be fine, like full youth football stuff. I did something wrong, and he grabbed me by my face mask, pulled me down. 8 years old, pulled me in the face, and said, don't ever fucking do that again, or you'll never play. And I'm 8. I'm just like, holy shit, right? So I'm petrified of Coach Mike, and as long as I played for Coach Mike the next 2 years, I just played to not get yelled at.
Right.
So I was just like petrified of getting that type of negative response. A couple years later, I'm playing baseball for Coach Brewster, who's the dad of one of my friends, Brendan. And he treated me completely different. He believed in me. I wasn't a great baseball player, and he created this confidence in me. He goes, Johnny, we're gonna have you play catcher. You remind me of Yogi Berra. I didn't know who Yogi Berra was, but I went home and told my dad. Dad goes, Yogi Berra is one of the greatest catchers of all times ever played. So that built me up and built that confidence, and that's so he didn't have to say that, right? He didn't have to. But he built such a confidence and a belief in me by implanting those small seeds and just watering them all year long. Where Coach Mike ripped me down, Coach Brew built me up, right? And here I am at 42 years old, and those are the things I remember. I have distinct memories, and it impacts how I coach, it impacts how I parent, it impacts how I lead. So what we do will have repercussions long after we stop coaching these young people that we interact with, whether it's professionally, collegiately, high school, or at the youth level.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Goes back to how they made you feel,
Yeah.
How about this? Not to get into a bunch of dad stuff, but I played for my dad, right? Boot a ball at third base and look over and see, and I'm like, ooh. And then Rusty at short boots the ball on the next play. Come on, Rusty, let's get him. Let's get him. So what's going on here? But I remember how it made me feel. Okay. and it's shaped how I move forward and how I deal with my clients and the coaching that I've done. And I just wasn't going to do that, so I think that each generation of coaches, leaders, has the opportunity to get better than the last. They don't always take it. So
great point. Any other questions? Ryan, I saw you came off mute. I didn't know if you had a question that you wanted to pose.
I just wanted to say, Bob and Dom, I'm relying the top 10 coaches, and both of you have officially moved in.
Thank you. I get a little
Fantastic.
passionate when I speak, but I have a good time. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bob. And as we mentioned, guys, you'll get access to this recording sent out afterwards. We'll also have contact information, websites, and where to follow and connect with all of our coaches on our panel here today. So next up, we're going to take it over to Ron. And Ron, maybe a short introduction for yourself, and let's dive into your content for the day.
Yeah, happy to be here. Excited to chat with everybody, and honored to be a part of this group. And I just got to do one quick plug for Bob Turner. Some of you know I did a 44-hour workout this weekend, raising money for veteran suicide prevention, which I started working out at 8 a.m. on Friday, and I didn't finish until 4 a.m. on Sunday. And at about 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't remember if it was Friday night or Saturday night. My mind was a little busy. But I get a text message from Bob Turner that said, "Hey, I just woke up, thought that I should check in to see how you're doing." And that just goes to tell you the type of character you're working with when you're working with Bob Turner, because at my moment of needing that message, it's almost like he knew it, and it helped me keep going. So Bob, thank you from the bottom of my heart for keeping me going. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome, brother.
Of course. So a little bit about myself, Ron Lotti. I keep hearing everybody saying I'm 42, I'm 43, I'm 55. I can't keep up with these young kids, and I want to say I totally disagree. We can keep up, we just do it in our own way. I'm 43 years old, and I'm doing everything I can to keep up. I might not be as strong or as fast, but no one's going to work as long as I will. I promise you that. I'll just keep going, even if it's very, very slow. A bit about myself, I guess I can go in a little bit of detail. I'm an Army veteran, served in the United States Army National Guard. Fort Benning was my home for quite a bit of time. I loved it there. I've been a gym owner. I've owned a semi-pro football team. I own a barbershop now, which only makes sense because I'm bald. So that completely brings everything together there for you. But with all of the accomplishments that I'm fortunate to have gone through in my life, there's two things I can say to you. One is I'm 43 years old and still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I am a performance and mindset coach now because I love working with other people, but who knows where the future is going to take me. And then the second side of it is most people, if you spend some time with me, one, I promise you, you're going to walk away knowing how unbelievable of a human being you are if you spend any time with me. But the second side of it is you'll be amazed if I were to tell you some of the things I went through as a kid. I've been on my own since I was 15 years old. I unfortunately, at a very young age, witnessed drug and alcohol addiction take a very big toll on my mother. And to see her walk around with the shame that she felt every day is what my purpose is today. Because my mother, though most people in the world saw her as one thing, I got to see her 4 or 5 days a year as the most amazing human being you will ever get to know. She was all heart. She cared about absolutely everybody. She was one of the most caring human beings when it comes to us. We just didn't get to see it every day. So my purpose in life now, and she ended up taking her life at one point, and my purpose now is to make sure that I try to bring out the best in every single human being so that I can live through her. Because if everybody here could have met her, and if they could have seen her at her best, they would have known right away how amazing she is, and she would have made this world a better place. So I only hope to do that every single day. So again, I'm honored to be here today, and it's interesting, right? We as an Army veteran, we get this aura around us, right, about doing hard things and pushing through and toughness, and I appreciate all of that. But I think there's a side of it that we tend to forget, and that's the mental health side of things. We'll face setbacks, we'll go through challenges, we have to find a way to keep going forward. And my topic today is really around that. When we're working with our athletes, it's not just about wins and losses. And I'm fortunate that I've been a personal trainer. I owned a gym. I still work with many athletes now. And certainly wins and losses matter. As Ed Milet will say, winning is more fun than fun is fun. And I don't disagree. But doing it at the expense of your mental health is not the way we want to go about it. So we want to win, but we want to make sure that we can help our athletes through the setbacks and through the challenges that they face. So I'm going to share a little stat with you that I was able to pull off of the interwebs, and everything you pull off of the interwebs must be true. So I'll share it with you. But basically, it said something along the lines of around 35% of college athletes report having performance anxiety and or struggling with mental health. The second side of that, though, is it takes up to 3 times for any athlete or any human being typically to admit that they are struggling with performance or they're struggling with mental health. So if I say that again, 35% of people admit that they're struggling, but it takes up to 3 times for someone to admit that they're struggling. That tells me we're really in the 70 to 85% of people are really struggling, and the people that you need to reach out to. And I would argue with everybody on this call, and if you were to think about everybody that you know, we all have our story. We all have things that we're going through. We all, as Dom said earlier, have those ways that we talk about ourselves. I would argue that 100% of people have battles that they're facing that maybe we know about, but maybe we don't know about. And the best programs in the entire country, the best businesses in the entire country, I'm fortunate to work with not only coaches and athletes, but a lot of business owners across the country. The top performing ones always make mental health part of what they do to help their people. It might not be this big, huge program that they're putting together, but there are certain things that they do when they're working with people to make sure that they're focusing on mental health. And my hope here today is to share some of the things that I've learned over the past 20 plus years of self-reflection, and give you a few takeaways that can help you level up your program, but also do so in a way where you're making a lasting impact. Bob alluded to some of this, which is the first and foremost important part of working with anybody when it comes to mental health is building trust. If you can't build trust with your athletes, if you can't build trust with your employees, the game's already lost. And there's a simple way of doing this, and I struggle with the word vulnerable because I'm a veteran, I think. So when I worked with a lot of the individuals in my platoon, I used to change the word to authentic, which is just a word play here, folks. But essentially, it helps me to feel stronger when I say I'm being my authentic self. What does that mean? We talk about being your authentic self or being your best self or anything like that. It's making sure that your athletes and the people that you work with know who you really are. You're willing to share your own struggles. You're willing to share your own battles. You're willing to be an open book for the most part to them, so that they can get to know you and therefore open themselves up so that you can get to know them. That's first and foremost. Second side of that, though, is actively listening and paying attention to what they're saying, the cues and clues behind what they're saying, getting to know who's in there, to Dom's point, who's in their environment, who do they hang out with, both on the positive and negative side of that. Who are the people in their life that when they talk about them, they just light up? Who are the other people that maybe they shouldn't have in their life? What's their environment look like? What do you actually know about them as people? And then showing empathy. And this is a tough one, I think, in a lot of environments because everything's so fast-paced and we're all judged on production. We're all judged on numbers and what we're accomplishing. If we're to slow down and realize that we are of an open door policy and anybody can come to us at any time, but most importantly, we're not going to judge them for that, that's when the trust is really built. I've unfortunately been around coaches in my life and others that tell me they have an open door policy. And then when I use that open door and I express some of the things that I'm challenged with or facing, they hold that against me. Maybe they don't put me in. I think of a very specific example. This isn't athletic, but this is in my career where I let my boss at the time know I was struggling with some things that I was going through. And that boss at the time said they fully supported me, yet the next day took me off of multiple projects and said, well, we weren't sure you could handle it, which made me feel like I was, to Bob's point, this big. And it totally took that the wind out of my sails and maybe not want to open up to that individual anymore. But then I think of another coach and leader that I had who literally would say to me, you can call me anytime about anything, and that conversation will be in the moment, It'll be about you, and I'm just here to listen. And that individual was there for me at 2 o'clock in the morning, multiple times, just a text message. Hey, I'm here. I'm in the foxhole with you. What do you need? When you're authentic, when you're willing to share who you are, when you're willing to listen, and then when you actually follow through and mean what you say, you start to build that trust. You get to know your athletes, you get to know your employees, and it helps you be the coach that you need to be for them. And I can promise you, the programs across the country that do that are levels above and going to skyrocket beyond. We talked a little bit about being authentic right there and building trust. The second part of it, though, is really recognizing the signs in your athlete. And it sort of goes along the same basis. If you don't know your athletes, if you haven't built that trust, you can't recognize the signs. There's easy ones when we think of setbacks. You're in a slump. You lost a major game. If you're in work, you lost a sale. Those are easy ones to recognize. Mental health side of things, isolation, irritable, quiet. There are other parts of it too, not sleeping. They're not as involved with the team as they typically are. They lack focus. They seem down. They're hard to reach. Those are ones that I think everybody goes to. Looking back on my life, though, and some of the ups and downs, and I'm going to back up for a second and share with you something that I've learned about myself. There was a time in my life where my depression and my PTSD would last very long, and it would go very, very deep. So we talk about the standard that we want to live up to, right? And there's things that we want to achieve. I had many moments of my life where getting out of bed, changing my clothes, drinking coffee, and brushing my teeth were a win. And I had to recognize that that's a win. Some of the things that we try to solve for is how do we help that length get shorter? How do we help that depth get less deep and much more shallow? Because if we can help people through that, the wins start to compound. So going back to that, one of the things that I had to go back on and recognize were, ironically, sometimes when I was at my absolute peak, I was the loudest person in the room. I seemed like the happiest person in the room. I was full of all kinds of energy, was when I was faking it more than it was real. And that's still true to this day for the most part. And you won't ever know that about your athletes. You won't ever know that about your employees if you don't get to know them as human beings. So try to recognize some of those things and help them through it. Something else that I used to do more than others, this is a baseball and a football thing, I would show up before everybody because I didn't want to be home. And I would stay well after practice because I didn't want to be home. I didn't want to face the things I was going through. So I would take batting practice until my hands were bloody. I would hit the weight cage. I would lift weights. I would run drills on the field just because I didn't want to be there until my knees hurt. And it wasn't until a coach pulled me aside and said, "What's going on? I love the effort, but what's really going on?" And he made me feel like a human being. I think of my high school coach at the time, when I was a sophomore in high school, when I loved playing football, and I walked up and said I was going to quit. He knew enough about my life. He had asked questions. He had asked other people in the town. I lived in a very small town, so people spoke and they knew what was going on. He pulled me aside and said, "You can quit if you want to quit. That's not what I'm here to help. I don't want to change your mind. But what I want to make sure you understand is that you matter, not just to this football team, but to the school and to this world. You have purpose, you have meaning, and I want to make sure that you understand that. What you do every day shows that to all of us. You don't have to play in the football field, but please don't let what's going on at home make you think that's who you are as a person." I was 15 years old when he said that to me. That has sat with me then. It'll sit with me forever. I did end up quitting the team at the time, and it was mainly because of things I had to go take care of at home. But I came back and played again the next year. I stayed in touch with that coach, and he's a very big part of my life. Recognizing the signs. He could see that I was down. I was in the weight cage longer than anybody else, which sometimes can be good, but he knew what was going on. He got to know what was going on at home. He pulled me aside. Know your people, build that trust. And then that takes me to the last piece here, which is really about what are some things you can do with your athletes to help them get through. I would argue that helping them understand purpose and meaning is absolutely most important. But a close second is celebrating the process and progress over the outcome. We tend in the world that we live in now to only pay attention to the gold medals or the wins or the championships. And when we do that, everyone who doesn't achieve that has another level of setback that they have to go through. I love celebrating the fact that a person is willing to show up and work hard, be a positive impact on their teammates, and do everything they can to help their team. And if you set a massive goal, I had a goal for this charitable workout that I was doing of hitting $44,000 raised. I didn't get to 44,000. I'm still working towards it. We still get it 15 days, little plug, but we're at 30,000 right now. Had I not set the massive goal, I might not have even gotten to the 30,000 that we all wanted to get to. Celebrate the progress along the way. That's going to be absolutely important. It's critical. The second thing I can tell you, and this is from a personal coach who is near and dear to me, it's my wife. She's one of the most amazing human beings that I know. She's a personal trainer, she's a nutrition coach, and she's had to deal with me for the last 20 plus years. But what she does better than any human being is she recognizes signs in me that I'm thinking about the past, or I'm so focused on the future that I can't remember this moment. And she'll pull me aside and say, what's the next most important thing that you need to do? She brings me back to the standard. She brings me back to what I call non-negotiables and says, just focus on the next thing. Those are things you can do with every single one of your athletes. It's not about, I'm in a slump, I'm 0 for my last 12 and I've got to get out of this slump. No, how can we practice that swing? How can you get back in the cage? And what can we focus on? It's not about, I haven't hit my last 7 shots and I'm hurting the team. It's what can we do? And here's a couple wins that I've worked with athletes on in the past. And this is when I coached youth sports. This gets a little controversial, but this is one thing that I've done with football. I had an athlete who was the star on the team, but he was struggling. He was our quarterback and he was struggling. He was our best hitter. He was our best linebacker and a quarterback. He was struggling up here. I knew he had some things going on at home. One practice, I basically lined him up so that he would have a crack back block on one of the weaker players on the team. Maybe not the greatest approach, but what I wanted to do was give him, Jackson, an opportunity to run a play, make a massive impact, and feel good about himself. That was a little win. I sacrificed someone else at the time. I get it. But those things start to build momentum. Coaching youth baseball. I had an athlete that was 0 for his last 14. He was having a hard time seeing the ball. So I came to practice the next day and said, my wrist hurts. I'm not going to be able to hit flies. We call them fungos out to the outfield. Brian, can you come do this for me? I just need someone to just hit some fly balls out to left field. And he did it over and over and over and over again. Later that day during our game, he's getting used to seeing the ball. Little wins build on big wins. And then finally coaching basketball, which I'm probably the worst basketball player you'll ever meet. But a friend of mine had me help coach because he wanted me to help get effort out of people. He was having a hard time hitting his shots. So we pulled him aside. All we did was we had him hit free throws over and over and over again until he just saw the ball going into the net. You guys hear it all the time, NBA players, they just need to see the ball go into the net. Find little wins, and it's going to have a massive impact on all of your athletes. And again, I just want to double down. The most important side of all of this, though, make sure every athlete you're working with, and you can't do this until you know them deeply, make sure they know the purpose and meaning they have. I've seen so many coaches throughout the years put players in during what they call junk time. Hey, we're in junk time. Steve, I'm going to put you out in left field. I'm going to get you some playing time. That immediately messes with athletes' minds. No rep, no moment is not meaningful. Every single one of them matters. They all pertain to the team. Make sure every single athlete you have in your program, every single employee that you have in your business knows that they matter and knows that they have a massive impact on the outcome. So I'm going to leave you with another stat here. Less than 8% of high school athletes play beyond high school, and less than 2% of college athletes go pro. The work that you are all doing with your athletes may seem like we're focused on the right now. What you're actually doing is building the strongest foundation for who they will be as a spouse, as a friend, as an employee, and as a parent more than anything. If you can help them build the mental toughness that they need now, not just for wins and losses, but what they do during times of adversity, they will be the best spouse, husband, father, employee, and friend that they can possibly be. And you are literally changing lives. Everybody on this call, you are all changing lives and making a massive impact in this world just by doing that. My hope is that you all take the gift that you have of being a coach and being a leader, take that seriously, help people learn those skills. And when these struggles appear, they seem like nothing, they can get through those so they can pass the test every day, get through the darkness, and keep moving forward. I appreciate it.
Awesome, Ron. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate one, just your candor, your, I was gonna say vulnerability, but I'll say authenticity instead. As a military veteran, I think there's a lot of, again, I think, back in the World War II days, there was kind of two things that happened. Everybody got drafted, and when even the athletes, right? So you had these like old school like WW2 vets who were coaches. So there was a lot of military euphemisms that are kind of burned into the sports culture, going to battle and like the whole thing. I like so I still use those euphemisms, but I think also you touched on some things around like the performance requirement, and it's interesting being in the Olympics going on too, because my daughter this morning, we were watching table tennis, Olympic table tennis. Fascinating because like these women were playing, I mean, these were athletes. They like the vigor they're putting into it's not like me and my son playing it in the garage. I mean, these guys are going at it, and it's a like semifinal matchup. You lose, you're done. And it's this 19-year-old girl from the US, and she's going at a little bit older woman from, and probably mid-20s, from Brazil. And the young lady from the US wins. She's drops to the like just the you could just think about, even if you're just playing table tennis, to be the best at anything, the best soldier, the best parent, the best coach, the best athlete, the best ping pong player, like the amount of time you have to put in and the mental load you carry and just the stress of that can be amazing. And you can see the dichotomy of winning and defeat. The young lady from Brazil, devastated. I've worked 4 years for this. You have no guarantees if you're ever going to get back. This other young lady, I've worked so hard for this, probably, since she was at 12, 13, 14, she's 19, and just like the elation of it all. But the risk is getting your identity tied up in the outcome of the performance versus your worth being you, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about that, where the identity part of this, and like getting to know the value of getting to know your athletes in order to ensure that they know that they are not the outcome of the performance, that they are valuable just because they are. And you alluded to that a little bit about your experience around kind of how, and we've talked about it before, about how people make you feel, but like, discuss a little bit of that concept around because a lot of times I think coaches become transactional, right? Like, it's like, I put you on the field, you perform. Getting the best out of you as an athlete is where my job begins and ends. And I think that we're both selling ourselves, the sport, and society short, because I would argue, and you kind of made this point, nobody is more well positioned to have greater impact on the future of humanity than coaches. You will touch more lives. Maybe teachers and coaches have the opportunity to have greater impact. I have 4 kids, but I have way more influence with the hundreds of kids that I coach across a year, with all the different athletic groups that I touch, versus my 4 kids. Like hopefully I do really good there, and actually the kids I coach probably listen to me better than the ones who live under my own roof. That's a different story. But anyway, so give me a little bit of thoughts on that, Ron, because I'm interested to see your perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple thoughts came to mind immediately when you were saying that. Is that person, that athlete you mentioned that did not win, she's the second best out of how many billions of people live in this world? That is,
Exactly.
holy cow, incredible. But in the moment, she may not look at it that way. And that's unfortunate. I hope she does. I hope her coach reminds her of that. But the second thing that comes to mind is I bet you the impact that she has already had around all of her teammates, around her family, around all of the 12, 13-year-old people that look up to her, 13-year-old kids that look up to her. I mean, she is leaving a massive legacy that will be such a massive positive impact on this world that it cannot be put into numbers. It cannot be put into numbers. And what it comes down to, I believe, is living to be the example every single day. But someone needs to remind you of that. I need that reminder constantly. I struggle with it all the time, even still to this day, of just kind of remembering who I am and what I live for, and hopefully the positive impact I'm having in everybody's life. And I'm constantly reminded by it by my daughter who just turned 20 years old, who is the most incredible human being I know. It's unbelievable. I wake up every morning and I just can't believe how blessed I am to have her in my life. And I have to be reminded sometimes that Lori and my wife and I, raised her, right? I mean, she's worked very hard for what she has become, but that's a big win. So I just think it comes down to recognizing the daily wins versus the game itself. And the last thing I'll say on it, John, without going too long here, is it's funny when I think back to my time playing football and when I owned a semi-pro football team and we won the championship. There's a picture of me right when we won the championship. We have the whole team celebrating on the left side of the picture, and then the scoreboard in the middle, and then you can see me way down on the other side of the field by myself. I still struggle with this to this day. The process is so much more important to me, and the daily grind, if you want to call it that, and the daily wins, that moment for me was actually a letdown. And we won, and great, but okay, now what? And I had to have a moment alone where I sat to myself and thought, okay, how do I get everybody back together and do this again? And where do I find this inner purpose again? And it's still, I'm not going to lie to you, that's still something I struggle with, but recognizing that in people, I think, is extremely important. Celebrate the outcome, but celebrate the process and the progress along the way as often as you possibly can. A person can go 0 for 4, but they gave it their all, and you need to find some way of celebrating that. You know what I'm saying? They made some sort of an impact. Recognize when they're 0 for 4, but they're cheering on their teammates. They're going after everybody and uplifting them. Recognize all of that, because that's going to help the rest of the team long term. So long-winded answer, but that's where my head goes, John.
I appreciate that. And Bob, I know you got a question, so go ahead and chime in.
Thanks. Ron, you kind of just led up to my question, which was I've done Ironman stuff and big endurance stuff, nothing 44 hours long, but I've done some things that take a while, and they take a while to train for, right? And 2 points. One, first one's a point, second one's a question. One, you're absolutely right. For me, the Ironman stuff was the real memories I have of all the training, all the tough rides, all the times getting out the door, all the times where I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway to be prepared for a race day, right? But my question is for you, and it's rooted in your 44-hour workout. Oftentimes with Ironman, 10 days out, 2 to 3 weeks out, I would have this incredible down feeling, like almost like probably on paper depression, because the goal has been met. What do we do now? Right. And to your point, it's more about the process and all that. Like, you're sitting over there watching everybody celebrate. You were probably sad. It's over. What am I going to do now? So how are you dealing with, you just did this monster workout. You reached the top. You got it done. How are you dealing with the letdown of that being done? What do you have for plans to maybe reach out and make sure you're okay here in a couple of weeks?
I appreciate that question. And I'll be authentic here with all of you. And yesterday was a very, very difficult day for me. I finished at 4 a.m. Sunday. I went to sleep, woke up around 11 a.m. On Sunday. Felt, for the most part, my legs were a little sore, but for the most part, I felt fine, which was kind of crazy. That gives me an idea that I trained well, and I have an amazing nutrition coach in my wife that made sure I had fuel that I needed to throughout the whole time, which is incredible. To know that you burned over 30,000 calories in 2 days and you still felt okay was crazy. So then I had Monday off as a day to recover as a just in case, and I didn't know what the heck to do with myself. I was getting all these messages from people saying it was incredible, that was great, but to your point, Bob, all I kept feeling was, okay, like what now? I have that gift in a curse, and I think it has to do with things I went through as a kid growing up. That every moment of every day feels like it could be the last for me, and I put this immense pressure on myself in every moment. I'm not even kidding you. In every moment of every day, like right now, this moment, all I care about is all of you on this call. It's so important to me to connect with all of you. But that's a gift and a curse, because there will be moments where it's just being is okay. And I had to try my best to get back on track. And yesterday I struggled with that, Bob. What I did this morning when I woke up is I said, I'm going to go back, and my wife reminded me of this, is go back to those daily standards and remember what you're trying to accomplish. And that's just being the best version of yourself that you can be in that moment. I got up, I had my 20 or so ounces of water, took my vitamins, had my coffee, read my book, did my meditation. And ironically, the meditation that I do, it took me through this. It's a guided meditation, and it basically talked about having grace for yourself and recognizing it. So it was almost like timed perfectly. So I'm still working through it. The letdown is real. But I think what I've tried to learn over the years, and what I'm going to work very hard on the rest of today and over the next week or so, and I'm open to everybody checking in on me because we're all in this together, is reminding myself that it doesn't have to be this big, massive thing. Leading by example in the moment, and to your point, making an impact on somebody else's life is plenty. And that's my intention. So I'm hoping that doing this today helps me feel a little bit better in a couple hours.
Good, good. Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point, because you hear a lot, especially, you know, I mean, athletes at any level, but high level athletes, and any of us who are you know, weekend warriors, right? Like I remember after running my first marathon, and Bob, I'm sure you can relate with this too. It's like it was, I mean, I trained for, you know, being a competitive athlete in college, and then when that was over, it was like I was lost. I was completely lost for a year, until a buddy of mine said, "Hey, we should run a marathon." And I thought it was the worst idea in the world, because I'm like, running is punishment. It is not joy. Like, why would I want to do that? This is the worst thing in the world. But I'm like, all right, like, and I'm packing the pounds on. I'm not active. I gotta find something to work towards, right? And so it taught me about, and this is something for, you know, athletes as they move out of athletics, or the fact that, you know, if your objective is the outcome, right? If it's like, all I want to do is win a championship, right? When you get it, you're gonna be like, man, this didn't fill the void, right? So usually the process, the journey is the joy, and you know, the championship, the winning or not, whatever the case is just the byproduct of that. And you're really like, you get it and you're like, huh, like this didn't mean as much. Because for me, those months of training starting in April, and I remember distinctly, pouring rain, April, 2 mile first training run. I'm like, oh, this is miserable. What am I getting myself into? But like, you know, that's the stuff that I love. That's why I still run every day to this day. I've just started training for another like little 10-miler for charity. Your charity causes, as far as the excruciating pain of a 44-hour training workout, I'm just running 10 miles. So a lot less, but at any rate, you know, something to train for. So I'm starting that right now, and I had forgotten how much I enjoy just the process of working towards something. And that's something I try to instill in the athletes, is that, you know, and this is all connected, right? About the enjoying the process, the person that you become along the way, right? What's more valuable? And I can't wait, Maren, to get to your conversation on this, who, as one who's done it at the highest levels, of like, both coaching and playing athlete, playing sports, basketball in your case, of the journey, just like the journey you will become on your way is 1,000 times more valuable than whatever you're going to gain at the end of that journey. And kind of the most out of that you can acquire by understanding that the mental health and focus and those things are all a big part of it. Because if you're not allowing yourself to have that room to talk about your feelings and then you're not going to get the full experience, right? You're not going to get the most out of it that I feel like you can. And so I think that's a huge part of the process. Ron, anything else you want to touch on that we have that you want to explain that you haven't touched yet, or anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick first, there's no little 10 miler, by the way. No, just okay. Give yourself some credit, my man. But beyond that, I would say, this idea of the 44-hour workout came from years ago when I was in the depths of it myself and needed to find a way of helping myself come to terms with the things I went through as a kid. And it all started with putting on a heavy vest and getting on a treadmill and just going for as long as I can and forcing myself to be in that moment and be okay with recognizing what had happened, but almost like putting it like a picture on the wall, like it happened, that it was there and it's okay, it happened, but it's not who I am moving forward and it's not going to define me moving forward. So spending time with that was critical. And that ended up turning into running a program at my gym where anywhere from 5 to 10 people would show up at 9 o'clock at night, and I would put them through some grueling, challenging workouts, but with the hopes of helping them all see how amazing they really are and how the hard things that we do in life can lead to doing even better things. And I loved helping people achieve more than they ever thought was possible. And the beauty that I get from that now is I get to see all of them posting on social media of the impact they're having in other people's lives now and overcoming it. So, in closing, I appreciate having time to be here with all of you now. Just know that the challenges that you face, keep moving, keep finding a way to pass the test and move forward, because you're capable of far more than you think that you are. And the legacy that you're going to leave everybody around you is absolutely going to be the most memorable thing. It's not just that one outcome here and there. And lastly, I'll say I am extremely passionate about having opportunities to speak with people like this and go to places and take people through some of these training programs to force them through challenging times so that they can see the best greatness that they have inside of themselves. So if any of those opportunities come up, I would love to have a chance to do so. I appreciate this time so much. This means a lot to me. Thank you, guys.
Ron, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. And one, thank you for everything you do to bring light to this, what can be a challenging topic to discuss. I too, so I had, didn't know about this until you just shared your story. Alcoholic father, took his own life when I was in the military, dealt with depression, had friends in the military that took their own lives. It's been a kind of a thing. If you hear my story, the bottom of my barrel was me, not just contemplated, but fully committed to taking my own life almost 13, 14 years ago, but coming from that to discover meaning and focus and self-development. And so it's important to talk about these things, and it's important to talk about them with athletes, because also right now, young athletes are contemplated and taking their lives at a rate we've never seen before. So this is a really important thing for us not to underestimate the positive impact that we can have as coaches or just as support networks to young people, that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to talk about how hard things can be, and that we can become great in spite of them, and maybe more importantly, because of them. And that can take us to heights that we haven't even thought about yet. So appreciate you, Ron. Thank you so much for being here with us today and discussing those things with us. It's super meaningful. All right, we'll switch gears here a bit. We're gonna switch over to Amit. Dr. Amit, who's going to not talk too much about nutrition and health, though he's an expert in that field and could definitely deliver us information on that. And if you want to talk about sports nutrition and optimization around those types of benefits and health, Amit's definitely your guy. But he's got a little bit of a different topic for us today. So Amit, a little intro, and let's jump right in.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Ron. Such a powerful message. I could actually ditch all this and just go off of what you two have talked about. Is mental health is just huge, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing those stories. So my name is Amit. I'm a father of two beautiful children, 17 and 15, and I've been married for 22 years. A beautiful wife, and I will say that I am really good at counting pills. Let me tell you, I'm so good. I've been doing it for 25 years. I'm that good that when kids were younger, we'd go to parties and they'd always want me to count the number of candies in the dish. Not only would I always win, but I'd get within 10. So I was really good about that. So we can talk about medicine all day long. I'm actually a pharmacist by profession. But what I really want to talk about today is accountability and how it has changed my life. And I call it a dose of accountability, in that I know how impactful it can be for everyone else. And just a 3-step quick little process I can walk you through, and I can really walk you to the point of feeling overwhelmed, or if you're feeling frustrated, you can use these 3 steps to really elevate your life and your line of thinking. So I want to share a quick story. I want to go back my youth. Growing up as a kid, I was an achiever, right? I was really good at achieving, and I realized my goal was to really get the approval and acknowledgement of my mom and dad. That was important to me, especially my dad. So growing up, I did really well in school. I achieved my awards. I realized I kept doing that because I was getting pat on the back and just told how great I was and the success. Well, it led me to, once I got to high school, I got accepted to a doctorate of pharmacy program at the University of Southern California. So at USC, I got accepted to the program. Myself and a very good friend of mine, we both got accepted to do this 6-year program. And we both agreed at that time that we would start this program together and we would finish together as graduates with our doctorate. 6 months into the program, we discovered women, we discovered gambling, and we discovered alcohol. First semester, 6 months into the program, we both got bounced out of the program. Didn't make it 6 months. We were both put on probation. And we talk about, we're all part of the Ben Newman's group. We all talk about the seduction of success. Let me tell you a fine example you're looking at right here. Achieved success all throughout my life. Thought I would achieve success. The next step would be easy for me, and it wasn't. So here's the thing. The moment I got bounced from that program, back then there was not emails. So the letters went home. Well, I went back home and I thought, my dad's not going to touch that letter. I'll just blow it off and I'll figure out something else to do, another path to take. Well, I also didn't realize at that time that my father was actually laid off from his job. So he was really counting on myself and my sister to really carry on for the family and succeed in all the hard work him and my mom put forth. Not even an opportunity to pull into my driveway. My dad's holding the letter. And he looks at me with that letter and he says to me these words: get your shit together, get back into that program, or don't come back to my house. I was actually going to him for the hug, for him to tell me how proud of me he was in getting into this program, and maybe we can work this out together, right? We're going to do this together. But that wasn't the case. The moment I heard that, I think anger is an understatement for me, because not only did I feel like I underachieved, but what was I going to do next? I really didn't have a plan. But what I did do next is what I want to share. I didn't realize it. I gave myself a dose of accountability. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, am I doing the things that are necessary to put me in the right frame of mind? And that goes to this 3-step process. That goes to identifying the problem, implementing a solution, measuring, and adjusting. Those 3 steps. So I'll give you a little spoiler alert. I ended up getting back into the program. I ended up graduating with my doctorate of pharmacy. I ended up owning and operating retail pharmacies. So approximately about 2% of pharmacists that graduate go into this field and end up filling over 3 million prescriptions and doing a large amount of sales, over $100 million. Now, that doesn't matter. That I don't want to say that to impress. I mean to press on the point here that by taking that dose of accountability, it can take you to from where you are to whatever level of success that you feel you want to have. And I start with identifying the problem. What was the issue? So let me start by saying this. Was I going to class every morning? No, I wasn't. I wouldn't acknowledge that. Class was at 8 a.m. I would stroll in at 7:50 with my fumbling my notebook around, sitting in the back of the class with all the cool kids, while all the kids that were doing really well, where were they? They were sitting up front in the front row, but I wouldn't dare go up there. Start with that. Secondly is, who am I surrounding myself with? And that's important. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Are they learners, or are you on the outside? We talked about this earlier. You step into the room, you're the sum of the expectations of the 5 people you saw yourself with. Clearly I wasn't. But that was my second issue. And thirdly is, stop making the excuses. I was making so many excuses for myself. My father was laid off from his job. I was a commuter, so therefore it takes me an extra hour to go to class. I don't have some of the resources the other kids have. We were struggling financially. Is that the case? Maybe. But what am I doing about that? So I initially identified the problem, and most importantly is implemented a solution. So what are my solutions, and what did I do in that case? Well, most importantly is you make those adjustments, right? You show up to class. You're not showing, if class starts at 8, you're going to show up at 7. You're going to be ready to go. And you're not sitting in the back row. If you show up at 8, you're in the back of the bus. Get there at 7. You're going to show up early. You're going to perform like the other students perform. And most importantly is assess and measure, right? And this goes for anything. This goes for, we can talk about medication. We can talk about health. We can talk about parenting, whether it's our spouse or our marriages. What are you measuring these, and what exactly are you doing? If you're not measuring, you can't adjust, right? So measurements and adjustments are key in everything we do. So those are really the 3 steps. And I want to say this, at graduation itself, my friend who I mentioned earlier, we were both at graduation. But here's the thing. I was with the graduating class, and he was in the audience, and we made eye contact together. And it was very uncomfortable. And he came up to me afterwards, and he looked at me and he said, I quit on my dreams. I didn't fulfill my expectations, and I have that regret for the rest of my life. In that moment, those words echoed with me. That could have been me. That could have been all of us here today. But the difference is that we take that dose of accountability to move us in the right direction. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to share that with you.
That's fantastic. And you know, I think I shared my personal story about my, you know, challenges post collegiately and how it led to me becoming, you know, coming close to taking my own life, and the struggles that amounted to that. Part of it was the accountability and my lack of taking of it. And I'll take that a little bit deeper because I think it's relevant here because it's in the sports arena. So when I was a sophomore, the year between my freshman and sophomore seasons for my collegiate lacrosse team, I worked so hard. I worked super hard. I was in the gym. I was playing wall ball. I had my roommate and best friend was an attackman. I was a defense. We played one-on-one all the time. Got better. Both became captains that year. And we went from being a 1-10 team to like a 7-5 team to then the #1 team ranked in the country for our division, our level. Then something interesting happened that season. I stopped doing the work. I had that seduction of success. I stopped. I found girls and partying and success, right? It's like everyone loves a winner. And so I started deviating from the process, so much so that I was showing up to practice. Like we had weekend practices that we were doing with some high school kids to try to recruit them and kind of having fun. I showed up drunk. My coach pulled me aside and said, "You got to change. You got to figure this out." I was like, you know, I'm a captain, and this is the thing. This is the way I'm acting, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, right? I'm a captain. I'm a starter. Like I'm not gonna, like, you know, it didn't resonate, right? It's like, this is you, not me. End of the year, they sit me down and say, you're not gonna be a captain next year. And you know, the story plays out however it did. I still didn't even, you know, next year we were still successful. We were number 1 team ranked company. We went to the national championship tournament. Like, so I was kind of like, so what now what, right? It didn't really hit me until years later when I go through that bottom as an adult, where I went back to that coach and I just saw that coach. Well, let me get to this point. So I went back to that coach in tears after an alumni game, and I said, "You don't know how much you helped me. I didn't realize it at the time, but you taught me about accountability and about self-ownership. We talked about extreme ownership earlier. Like, you taught me that, but I wasn't ready for the lesson yet, right? It was like I needed that medicine, but I wasn't ready to take it. And so I didn't realize it till a couple years later. And it was the best thing you could have ever done for me, because if you didn't do that for me, I would have never learned this lesson. I've been the same guy that I was, you know, I'd be the same guy today that I was back then. That coach now coaches youth girls lacrosse, and my daughter tried out for his team, and there I see him. His name's Coach Mooseberger, and I walk up to the field, and he's a massive man, and I give him this big old bear hug, and you know, eyes well up again. Every time I talk about it, I get emotional because of how much it meant to me. So when we talk about coaches and the impact that can have, and that's kind of a theme we're sharing through this, on the life lessons that resonate with us years, decades later. You know, I'm 42 years old. He taught me that lesson when I was 22, 21, 22. So 20 years later, and it's still something I talk about, still something that resonates with me, still something I tell my kids about. Like, they don't need to learn about the you know, the alcohol abuse and the partying quite yet. They're a little bit young for that, but about losing something to gain something and the importance and impact on that. So really resonated with me, Amit, your topic of accountability, and definitely a part of my story. Any questions for Amit? Anybody have anything they want to weigh in on or ask about?
Yeah, well, Amit, just curious, like what flipped the switch for you? Was it just seeing your dad and how disappointed he was, or what made you decide, other than that?
You know, Bob, thanks for the question. You know, to be honest with you, as I achieved success as I was younger, I realized I always made excuses. It was always somebody else's fault. This is where I am because it was their fault. And for the first time, I took accountability, and I want to look myself in the mirror and say, are you responsible for this? Or how long are you going to spend your life blaming other people for things that you can control? And actually, Bob, it's interesting, even in my pharmacy practice now, as I work with patients, I learn a lot of this because I see them, and whether it's high blood pressure, whether it's diabetes, whether it's cholesterol, everyone always comes, even like we can even go into weight loss, right? Those that are heavier, I see it. It's always an excuse. It's my thyroid. It's my metabolism. I'm too busy. And I see all these, and it's very difficult for me to, nobody wants to be called out. That's not my place. Like you said, you have to be ready for it. That's a key thing, is you have to be ready for someone to speak to you. If you can hear it all you want, if you're not ready to hear it, it's going in one ear out the other. So I think just I see that a lot every day, and I realize that I can help some of these patients, but it's more so that I was pointing the finger at everybody else but myself, and it was really a time to take accountability. I thought I would tie that to the pharmacy work and say, what if you take your dose of vitamins every day, you take your dose of medication, but are you taking your dose of accountability? And I think that really comes out, and it hits me really hard in the chest when I can look at myself and say, and even today, that was maybe one story of how I grew up, but there's probably the next 25 years that I've been practicing that I could go on and on about stories that were accountability. It came back to, am I being accountable to myself? And and Ron and John, you share very similar stories. Ron, with mental health, a lot of it comes down to accountability, but you have to be ready to hear it, right? I can't come to, and nobody can come to if you're not hearing it. But when you open up and you listen, like, your whole life changes because you actually hear what people are saying.
Thanks, Amit.
Man, I had a question about the continuing of accountability. So it's initially you take that dose, right? But sometimes that dose wears off. How do you kind of keep making sure you're keep taking your vitamins, like you said, each day, right? Keep taking your dose of accountability. How does that work?
100%, Dom. Thank you for that. And Dom, I think the most important thing is who are you surrounding yourself with? If you're surrounding yourself with people who are skipping their meds, it's exactly what you're going to do. You surround yourself with people who are not missing meds, they're not missing their dose, you're going to do this exact same thing. I think it's so powerful to say that we surround ourselves with individuals that want to grow, because it forces you to step up. And I feel like they will let you slide if you hang out with the sliders. And also, are you the strongest voice in the group? I'd be careful with that, because all of a sudden when you're looking really good, compared to what though? Like who are you looking good to? But if you're looking up, I would say you climb a mountain, like Bob, I know I watched some of your stuff. You go hiking, you climb a mountain. Most of us look down and go, "Oh, I did a great job." Some of us will look up and say, "I got another mountain to climb here." Like, let's look up instead of looking down. And I'm guilty of it, and I have done it for many years, where I've basically have been seduced by success. Like this is what I've done, and I'll define myself by it. But to me, those are changes I've had to make, and I'm constantly making. So I think, Dom, to answer your question, I think just surrounding yourself with the people who are going to call you out. And when you are accountable, you're ready to, you can be called out. Like, you can call me out and let me know what I'm not doing, so I can fix that and I can get better at it.
Thanks, Amit.
Thank you.
And we got a question in the chat from Wendy. Did you ever tell your dad the impact that statement had on you?
So my dad is 86, and would you believe that I still seek his approval even to this day. I never actually told him about that, because I have a feeling he would say he doesn't recall saying that. And I don't want to remind him at this age now, but I want him to see that impact that he had on me. I will tell him in other ways. I'll thank you so much for everything you've done. Probably not when I was that age. That probably wasn't my ideal. I would tell my dad thank you, but I look back on it and everything that they've done, and it's actually helped me as a parent with our kids to, of course, not take that approach. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not the approach I want to take, but it's an approach of how can I push and pull at the same time with our kids and help them achieve their greatest, and keep that line of communication open. I think not to get into parenting, but I think communication is everything. And I myself and my parents, my father was old school. I don't think communication was its best. I try to learn from that, and it's easy for us to say, well, my parents did this and that. But I try to focus on all the good things, all the positive things that came out of it, and how I can use that with our children growing up, moving forward.
Thanks, Amit. I think it's one of those things too. I know there's some need to separate parenting from coaching. I coach my kids, and so it's and maybe that that's an interesting topic for another day. But there is so much, I think, there's so much transference of capability from being a great coach to being a great parent, in my opinion. Right? Half of parenting is getting an unwilling participant to operate in the direction you want them to operate in. And so, and doing that in a way which doesn't cause friction. I have an 8-year-old son, and when I yell at him, he like totally goes, roll, like I can't get him to even talk to me. And so, and when I yell at, I told you my story about Coach Mike and him grabbing me by the face mask and yelling at me. I did the same thing. And I'll say in my head now, don't create resistance. Like when my son does, he's an active kid. He breaks stuff. Like he's an 8-year-old, right? He does things that 8-year-olds do. And this summer I coached a U10 lacrosse team, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. So I had a team of 17 of my sons with sticks and helmets running around the field, doing all types of kid stuff. And so in my head going, don't create resistance, don't create resistance, as like a coaching / parenting mantra of how do I eliminate resistance from them, getting in the way of me trying to help them get to where they need to be versus trying to force it. It's the I don't know if this is true, but I heard this story when Eisenhower was preparing for D-Day, and he had his generals around a table and he put a string out, and he pushed it from one side and it just bunched up. And he re-straightened it, and then he pulled it from the other side and the string all moved. And he said, you can't lead from the front, or you can't lead from behind, because everything will just get bunched up and nobody will move. You have to lead from the front, lead by example, like how we talked about, right? And I see that as like when you're trying to push, you're going to have resistance, right? But when you're pulling, you have all your weight behind you, that momentum there, and it carries everybody through. So I, just really appreciate your content here and what you've provided. Any last thoughts, Amit? Anything you want to leave us with before we transition on to Maren?
Yeah, just one last thought I just want to say, and I'll incorporate the kids, is I will say that the lessons are caught, they're not taught, and everything that you do today, those little eyes are watching you. Just a perfect example, my daughter, she plays golf, and she was actually just took off for a 2-day golf tournament. I was talking about visualizing. I heard my son in the background say, did you do your visualization of bringing that trophy home? And he never once would ever tell me that he said that, but I overheard him. But he's picking up some things, and those eyes and ears are always watching, and they're always, they have an eye on you. So if you don't think your actions matter, they matter. And clearly in my case, for my father, and hopefully being a parent, I can do the same. So thank you everyone for all your time.
Appreciate it, Amit. Thank you. All right. Well, last but certainly not least, and Maren, thank you for hanging out for almost 2 hours with us as we're rolling through this great lineup of speakers. But I'm super excited to welcome you to our virtual stage here. And so please, I know a little inside ball. Maren I'm originally a Marylander, as you may have picked up by my background decor, but for the last 20 some odd years, I've called Minnesota my home, specifically Bloomington, Minnesota. And when I walked into high school one day after being on a couple of calls with Maren, I looked over and I'm like, she's in the Bloomington Jefferson Athletes Hall of Fame. I knew that name from somewhere. So we have a Hall of Famer in our midst today, ladies and gentlemen. Really excited to have you here, Maren. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's jump right into it.
Thanks, John. I didn't know if that story was going to get kept in the peak, as Dom said, or if it was revealed. But true statement, true statement. But you thanked me. I want to thank you all for hanging with us for 2 hours. I can sit and listen to all of this, but I know as coaches and parents, there's a lot of things going on from throughout the day. So thank you all to the guests for hanging in there and listening. And what a great group you put together, John. I mean, I was taking notes, and from Dom's controlling the controllables, and Bob's standards and mantras and his experiences, and Ron, building trust. And I love how you phrased it, be the authentic you, because how many dudes are like, oh, I'm not vulnerable. Like, yeah, try talking to your college athlete, your male college athlete, about being vulnerable. Very different when you say, hey, talk about being authentic. I like the strength of that word. And Amit, accountability, man, you're speaking my language when it comes to being an active participant in your own life. And that's what I kept hearing you say. You were giving yourself a dose of accountability, and I kept saying, yeah, you were being an active participant in your own life, and you're not waiting for somebody else to step in. So I feel honored to be a part of this group. And I want to come from a personal leadership. And why I say that is, as coaches, and certainly as parents and spouses, and having so many people depend on us, we are all givers. We are all giving of our time, our resources, our energy, and that can be depleting. And so how do you, as the coach, the high school coach, the college coach, how do you as the coach lead yourself? You have to lead yourself before any of those folks in your locker room are going to follow you. How do you show up? How do you show up for yourself? That's what matters, because that's reflected in your energy, in your vibe, in the aura that comes in the room, in the locker room, on the court, or the field with you. It shows up in your interactions. It shows up in your patience for others, in how you talk, in your word choice. So really, how you show up for yourself, how you lead yourself, is the foundation for how you're going to lead and implement some of these strategies and tips that we've all learned today. As a college coach, you hear your locker room is a reflection of your office. The same is true as an individual. Your locker room, as the coach, the assistant coach, the head coach, the volunteer, the NBA, the NFL, the Division I, the Division III, does not matter. Your locker room, your personal locker room needs to be neat and tidy. It does not have to be perfect, but it needs to be cleaned up and attended to so that that other locker room gets your best self, and then they will mirror you. I was a college coach for 15 years. Played high school and college basketball, played professional basketball here in the States and overseas, and then got into a 15-year college basketball career. And you get into college athletics knowing you're going to get out one of three ways. You're going to win a national championship. I've got no rings. That did not happen. You're going to quit. And just by the sheer existence of professional and college sports, you're not a bunch of quitters. So that left one way. I was fired. I was fired for not winning enough basketball games. In college athletics, it is what it is. Outside of college athletics, it's like, oh my gosh, how are you? Are you okay? You're going to be all right? Did you do anything for the next 3 days? The answer is yes. Immediately, it was apparent to me that all the leadership I had put in to those student athletes over 15 years, I needed to turn it on myself. I needed to lead myself down whatever that next road and whatever that next path was going to be. Personal leadership really comes down to three things: how you talk to yourself, operating to your standards, not your feelings. And that's something that I think has been apparent because we're all of the like mind here. And then executing your personal game plan. As leaders, we hear all the time, communication is critical. And that is 100% true. However, I'm willing to bet when I say communication is critical, you are all thinking how you do that outwardly, how you communicate with your spouse, how you communicate with your kids, how you communicate with your administration, how you communicate with your players in the locker room. But how do you communicate with yourself? What is your self-talk? Jon, I loved it when you said I had to write it down here. I find myself saying, don't create resistance. That's self-talk in a positive, constructive manner. So think for a minute here. We're all coaches. We all coach somebody. We're all leaders, if only of ourselves. What were your thoughts? What was your self-talk in the shower this morning? What was your self-talk as you prepared something to eat this morning? How do you think about and talk to yourself about the people that you coach? The student athletes, the kids, the corporate executives. How do you think about them? How do you talk about them? How do you talk about yourself during your workouts? All of that self-talk matters. Why? Because it's a reflection of how you actually think about yourself and how you are going to show up every single day. It's not positive Pollyanna. I'm not going down that route. But also think about it. I know as a coach, I told my players, you would never tell the girl running next to you the things you're telling yourself. You would never tell the athlete next to you, you better effing go harder because I'm going to beat you. You would never say that. You're so effing tired. You would never say that. But that's what we all say to ourselves. So flipping the script and finding the replacement phrases such as, don't create resistance. I love it, Jon. You walked yourself right into that one. That's self-talk. That's helping Jon show up with a positive energy, with an interaction that his son wants to listen to. He might not say it, but he wants to listen. He finds himself gravitating toward that. So 10, 15 seconds. What's one thing that you have said to yourself today already that you can flip the switch, that you can change, that you can replace, that has a positive influence on how you show up? The second piece of personal leadership, and we've all talked about it here, is operating to standards and not your feelings. And if that's a new phrase to you as coaches, like you first think about it and you're like, okay, yep, my program has standards. Yep, I expect these things. Yeah, okay, I get it. But what are your personal standards? And how can you live by those standards and not the feelings that come? Standards allow you to have non-negotiable conversations with yourself. Standards eliminates that mental gymnastics game of, should I get up this morning? Should I not? Should I hit snooze? Should I not? Do I do the full set? Do I not? Do I have 4 chocolate chip cookies? Do I not? Like, that's a waste of energy. But when we operate to our standards and not our feelings, it's much easier to execute our game plan. So again, think for a couple minutes. Where can you create standards so that you are showing up positively and as your best self for the men and women, the kids, the girls and boys that you coach? I would challenge you to create a standard around your communication. I would challenge you to create a standard around physical activity. I would challenge you to create a standard around nutritional choices, how you treat others. Now, we don't need a laundry list of 15 standards because, my gosh, how do we keep all that straight? But maybe your standard is I physically move my body before noon every single day. We're in the sports world. We know that that sends off the endorphins. It gets us going. Maybe your standard is I don't eat out 2 meals in a row, 2 nights in a row. Start there. Maybe your standard is direct and communication, direct and concise communication. So when it's like, do I have this conversation with this assistant coach that I work with? Do I bring this to my head coach? Do I bring this to my student athlete? Yes, you do. Direct and concise communication, because that's how you operate. So when the feelings of, but I really want more cookies, snooze, sleep, that'd be much better. I would say it's too cold outside, but here in Philadelphia, it's like 95 degrees for the umpteenth day in a row. It's too hot out. I don't want to work out. I don't want to drive myself to the gym. I don't want to ride my bike to the gym. Nope. The standard is you get your butt out and you move your body every morning, Maren. That's the standard. It's non-negotiable. It gets things rolling. When you talk positively to yourself, when you operate to standards, not your feelings, you are able to execute your game plan. Your game plan. Again, we're coaches. Everybody from your little 10th grade lacrosse team to your collegiate basketball team. You would never go into practice without some sort of practice plan. Granted, those 2 practice plans are going to look very different. But neither of those coaches are going into a game without a game plan, knowing who the best player is, what our go-to plays are, where we think we can be successful. So why do you attack each day without a game plan? I admit, I'm the oldest child to my parents were a teacher and an attorney. Type A written all over it. I get it. But as coaches, we're leaders. We must be organized. Your team is not going to follow you unless you have your game plan set up every single day and work to execute it every single day. In this space, morning routines are often talked about. And they're talked about because they work. So what is your morning routine? I loved Dom bringing up, what was it, 2 hours ago now, Dom? Dom bringing up the I am statements. Do you have I am statements as part of your morning routine? As Dom said, I am statements are where we hope to be, where we want to be, where we're aiming to be. But when we say our I am statements every single day as part of our game plan, we are stepping into that future self, and it changes how we show up. I am the head coach of a top 25 team. How does that head coach show up? How do they interact? How do they talk? Where do they challenge their staff? Where do they challenge their student athletes? How do they interact with their family? They might not be a top 25 team yet, but if that's your I am statement, that's putting you in a position to think and operate and hold yourself differently. Bob, you also brought up mantras, which I absolutely love. I think I've already shared my mantra as be an active participant in your own life. The story of where that came from is for another day, but with the same audience, but for another day. But saying your mantra every single day, be an active participant in your own life, Maren, that's my mantra. Saying that every single day. I don't like this. I don't like that. She hasn't gotten back to this email. What am I going to do about it? Am I going to sit here? One term some of us are familiar with is aggressive patience. They hold hands a lot in my world. If you don't like something, be an active participant in your own life. That's a mantra that I say every day. Your morning routine has to have something to do with a nutritional choice, a fitness choice of some nature. We can't all be Bob and go run Ironmans. I mean, my knees, and I don't have enough cartilage in my knees to do any of that. Or work out for 44 straight hours. Neither, I can't do either of those guys. More power to you. But we can all put some sort of physical activity in our morning routine, some sort of nutritional choices in our morning routine. Our I am statements. And the last part of that morning routine is 3 things that no matter what else happens, those 3 things, when completed, you know that you've won your day. Which kind of brings us back to, as leaders, as coaches, people want. There's always a text message. Somebody's coming in your office, your admin, a student athlete, you barely get home at night, and your kids want something from you. You're a giver. But you still got to get things done. What are 3 things every single day? Not the same things, but what are 3 tasks that if you just do those 3 things, you can look yourself in the mirror at night and say, yes, I won today. Maybe it's getting a workout in. Maybe it's having a specific conversation. Maybe it's filing all the papers on your desk today. We can't always predict what's going to happen down the road later in the day, but if we can control our mornings with a solid morning routine, identify what makes today a winning day, recite our I am statements, speak to our mantra, we have primed our mind to take on whatever happens. And Lord knows, college coaches, high school coaches, the demographic that we work with, you never know what you're going to get. But if you can control and lead yourself every single morning to show up as your best self, the young men and women in your locker room, the kids on the field, the little eyes watching you in your house, they'll follow because you have chosen to lead yourself every single day. So before I hop off, my challenge to you, I mean, we're all coaches. Everybody was an athlete in some capacity. What is the next most impactful decision, conversation, choice that you can make right now that will impact your personal leadership. And if you just thought about some massive thing, I'm going to work out 60 minutes tomorrow morning and have no added sugar. Yeah, that's a fail. It can be really, really small. It can be, what's the next most impactful action that you can take might be putting your workout clothes out before you go to bed. Might be asking somebody in your house to be an accountability partner. Might be writing out your mantras. The next most impactful action that you take might be rewriting a couple self-talk comments. So that's my challenge. Before you can be the coach that you want to be and help your athletes control the controllables, be there for them so that they know you are someone they can trust, provide a space for their mental health, you must lead yourself. What's the next most impactful action, decision, conversation you're willing to have to elevate your personal leadership? That's what I got, John.
Awesome stuff, Maren. Thank you so much. And one of the things that you said that resonated with me the most is having a game plan or having that playbook. It got me thinking about, and the morning, the kind of morning routine. It got me thinking about what I tell my players when I coach them is let's focus on winning the first 5 minutes, right? Like the start to games are so essential. How you start, how you set the tone. I often tell my wife when the day gets away from me that I feel like I'm playing from behind. That in the morning when I'm supposed to, like, I was going to go for my run, but my kid needed something. So I just, like, whatever process was going to be the process gets taken, I get kind of knocked off my plan. And I always say, I feel like I'm playing from behind. And not till right now, listening to you speak, did I kind of put those two things together around that importance of the emphasis as a coach that I put on the first 5 minutes of any game. And it doesn't matter the sport, right? If you can set the tone in the first 5 minutes and right after halftime, like that's when you can kind of turn the tide. And now I'm thinking the importance of not only having a game plan, but executing it in the first 5 minutes of my game, which is that morning routine. Then I feel like I'm playing with the lead. And then the whole day has a different feeling when I feel like I'm playing with the lead. And then there's the thought around, not taking my foot off the gas and being able to press forward and saying, now that I get built up this lead, I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to keep moving forward. So let's explore that concept a little bit around, like, the self-leadership. We reflect on this before. You can't lead others until you can lead yourself. So as a coach, like having a plan, being prepared, and then setting up your days to win. When you were a coach, how did, like, you don't have to go into great detail how you did it, but maybe just like the importance of doing it and how you felt that might separate you or differentiate you or put you in a position to be successful.
I think a lot of it comes down to taking care of yourself, which is leading yourself, taking care of yourself. I distinctly remember being an assistant coach, and obviously I've worked out my whole life, right? Like that's part of being an athlete. And a coworker, a fellow assistant coach, she was a morning person, and she was always asking me to go to this workout class at 6:30 in the morning. And I was like, there's no way in heck I can get up. Like, that is too much for me. Like, no, I stay up till 11. I like to watch, I lived on the East Coast at this time. Like, I like to watch, sporting events that don't start till 8 or 9. Like, no. Transition to being a head coach when so many more people want your time and energy. It was like, if I was going to do anything for myself, it had to be before I walked in to my office. And I think parents can say the same thing. Why do parents get up at all these crazy hours? Because the moment that child, if they're in a crib or need to, get on the school bus for third grade, or a high schooler that's grunting at you at, 6 in the morning because they don't want to get up either, like, if they want to get anything done for themselves, it has to happen early. And then they are prepared. Again, it comes down to your nervous system, your mentality. How are you controlling yourself? How are you leading yourself, preparing yourself to take on whatever knocks on your door at your house or comes in your office, right? That when you are at a calmer state because you're not worried, you're not anxious, you're not underfed. Is that the right term? Because you didn't make your nutritional choices in the morning. If you can eliminate all of that, like, think of how you show up for people. Like, we all hear like, oh, don't talk to so-and-so, they're hangry right now. Like, I fall into that in the evenings, absolutely. But you don't have to be like that in the morning. You have a choice.
Yeah, so true.
Another diatribe here, like, choice is a big thing too. We all have choice.
Yeah.
We act like we don't. We think we don't. We think everybody has control over this, that, and the third. No, we all have way more choice than we want to believe.
And I think that's an important thing to monitor about ourselves. It's not just the choices we make, but the choice we make when we react to an event or an incident. And so, there, as a coach, it's ups and downs, and you express that with your own story about, eventually you either win enough games where you can just coach Saban and go off to the sunset and get on an ESPN set somewhere, or you're going to get fired. And Coach Saban got fired a lot of times before he got to where he was today, right? And so, but no one remembers, like, not a lot of folks think about Coach Saban and Bill Belichick being assistants on really bad Cleveland Browns teams, right? So, like, there's not this remembrance of how many times they had to get up from being down in order to become who they, or even being successful but not successful enough. I love the story of Pete Carroll, who gets hired as the Patriots coach and has a relatively good season, but for blank, it wasn't good enough. I want you to build the San Francisco 49ers of the East Coast, is what he told him. He went in 8 or 9 games and then they just split ways. So as you reflect on that through kind of the different successes and developments of your career, how important was it to manage through those ups and downs and learn from some of those losses or some of those transitions or some of those endings that you had when you move on from a role that sometimes can feel like unfinished business, right? If I just had a little bit more time, or I did what I wanted to do, how much learning is there in those experiences and opportunities?
I hear you talking a lot about like that transition, right? There's a lot of coaches that, transition from winning at a mid-major level to being promoted. And that's a positive transition, or transitioning from an assistant coach to a head coach. And that's like a positive transition. And I think we also hear a lot of when athletes, whether they're high school athletes, I think it was Ron, you gave us the statistics of how many high school athletes play college sports, but then actually go on to be professionals. Like, there's a lot of transition that happens in that. And there's transition that happens, in the negative way too, in coaching, meaning you get fired. Not everybody gets to walk out on their own terms, and being able to navigate that and see who you are outside of being that coach. Again, a lot of conversations around the identity of an athlete, but there's equally as tight connection of the identity between a coach as being their identity. And I don't know that that's always talked about. And I think that the most aware, the most successful can see that they are something other than just a coach, whether they're a connector, whether they're a mentor, whether they're also a parent. Not to say that Bill Belichick didn't identify as a coach. He most certainly did and does identify as a coach. And maybe he's not the perfect example, but whether it's attending to your mental health, controlling the controllables, having solid personal leadership, those are all skills that help you identify as something in addition to a coach. And I think that's what the healthiest and the most successful, because I mean, how do we all identify or how do we all define success? You know, some days my success is that I got my 3 checklist items done, you know, and that was have 3 meals today, you know, make 2 phone calls and get a workout in, and that is success. And another day, it's actually winning a basketball game. But being able to put in systems and techniques and see yourself as something other than just a coach because of the transitions that come and go for reasons sometimes outside of your control, but also sometimes you choose transitions.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, others, I want to invite others to ask questions or have comments for Maren. So anybody else who wants to chime in, please do.
Don't be turned off by my intensity. Earlier today, I was told a couple people were like, I can't really hear you. I was like, really? That's odd. I've never been told I'm a quiet person. That's really strange. So that's just the real me.
I loved it. I loved it. I put in the chat that I wanted you to put me in. I was ready to go play for you after that little pump up speech. But Maren, I wanted to ask, just like as you're coaching, right? I know from football, like life gets hectic real fast. Like if you come into the office and there's a coach coming in to talk game plan, then there's a player coming in to watch film, and then it just adds up and builds up. Just if you could speak to more about controlling those controllables of that morning and what that would look like throughout the rest of your day and how that almost compounds throughout the day, I'd love to hear your take on that.
You're calling them controlling the controllables, and the first thing that I think
Or I guess like what you're talking about, setting your standards for the morning and everything. Yeah.
No, I think we're on the same page there, Dom. The first thing that comes to mind is, what is your expectation? Like, what is your personal expectation? Not what do you expect that coach that wants to talk game plan, that they're going to have, you know, 3 new ideas or whatnot, but what is your expectation? And not lowering your expectations, but understanding your expectations so then you can live to your standards, meaning speak your boundaries, clear and concise communication of, hey, this is actually not the right time. We've been here for 30 minutes. We got to go. Like whatever that is. But understanding your expectations kind of goes hand in hand with being able to establish those standards, live to those standards, while also being flexible. I mean, I know I'm talking in a circle here, but this isn't just a cut and dry. We're dealing with fast-paced environment, athletics. No part of that means slow. No part of that means predictable. That's chaotic, regardless of your level. And you're also talking about an age group that, unless we're talking professional sports, and I would still argue that you're not dealing with fully mature and fully formed brains. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And so our ability to have standards, to understand our personal expectations, but then also be flexible to go with the student athlete that comes in and needs an ear, the text that you get that needs to be addressed. Like those are all needed things. But if you've taken care of your own shit, as Wendy said, like if you've taken care of your own shit, you can handle that with grace and in a way that is serving the people around you. Because you've taken care of yourself. None of this is self-serving. You have taken care of yourself. Helpful?
For sure. I think that's great, because I know that was one thing that I didn't have standards when I was a coach. I was just get through the day, like make sure I'm serving everybody and just do whatever, doesn't matter about me. And then I'd realize it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm trying to figure out the special teams game plan for tomorrow because I haven't had any time, because I've just been worried about everybody else and didn't set my days up for success. And so I felt like that was a very important thing for high school and college coaches to understand, that if you can take care of yourself in the mornings or set those standards, then you allow yourself to have more flexibility or more time, and that compounds over the day, where you're not stacking up, I guess, a bunch of stuff that you have to complete. You've already completed it, and now everything you're doing is able to serve yourself and others at the same time.
I think boundaries often get the term boundaries is like, that's a negative. Yeah, it's a negative to all the people that abuse you. Like it's actually really liberating and sexy for those of us who can communicate them. Same thing with standards. It's like, oh, you're too good, you have standards. No, I just know that I'm a better human for you if I get my workout in the morning. So my standard is that my alarm's going to go off at an hour that you don't appreciate, and I'm going to get up and do my stuff.
Love it. Appreciate it.
Well, we got about 5 minutes left. If anyone else has anything that they want to weigh in on, we can, feel free if there's any questions you had from any of our panelists, we can, talk about them now, or if any of our panelists had anything that they wanted to revisit or discuss, we can do that. So just give a chance if anyone had any other questions or comments for the group.
I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say I came here to support Bob first, but I got so much out of this. It was awesome. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate you hanging in there. And again, we want to, for those who are still on, we know that investing this duration of your time, first and foremost, thank you to the panelists. This was an idea birthed out of a common passion for teaching, for learning, and for coaching that we had and ideated on a couple months ago, and said, hey, we're just gonna hold a summit on Zoom. If no one shows up, we know we'll learn from each other, and if a couple people show up, then they'll be better for it. And we know that, and I think that one that showed out through Bob and Amit, Maren, and Dom and Ron, just your passion for what you talked about, your passion for each other, the passion for that topic, collectively, that topic of helping coaches reach their next level. So thank you, and I appreciate you for dedicating your time and efforts to bringing these messages together on this virtual stage together. And thank you for those who are watching live, who stuck with us, even if you only dropped in for 15-20 minutes. And as I mentioned, anybody who registered will be getting a link to this for the next 48 hours or so to the recording, which will be available permanently for those who registered and can register in the future and get this. So we'll have links to, if you really appreciated or resonated with one of our coaches and you want to learn more about what they do, maybe bring them in to work with the team or work with your athletes or with yourself. That information we made available so that you can get in contact with them. And as we mentioned before, this will not be the last time that we do this. We may add some different speakers as well as we go through the future, change the format up, maybe have, multiple shorter sessions. So we're going to get a survey from us asking for your feedback. How did this event go? What can we do better? What can we do different? What did you love that you wouldn't want us to change? And we really are looking forward to hearing back from you and getting that information. So as we close, I'll give an opportunity to our speakers, anything that anyone wants to say or share before we wrap up here today.
Thanks,
I'd
guys.
love to just
Appreciate it. Oh, sorry, man.
No, I was going to say thank you. I came to share a message, but I walked away as a student of just learning so much. Thank each and every one of you. You've all done fantastic and helped me along this journey as well. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, guys. I took notes. Appreciate it. Hey, we're all working on our craft, right? So thank you for the opportunity and appreciate it. And all you guys that are watching this on record after today, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Again, appreciate it. Thank you for our speakers, for all of our attendees, live and virtual. And we'll be in touch, and stay in touch with us. So we'll have links to follow along with us. A couple of us mentioned how fun it is to follow certain people on social media. So we'll have Instagram and X and other places where you can follow along with us and interact with us as well long after this recording is wrapped up. So thanks again. Have a wonderful day. Let's go do great things.